tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond, listening to the RBLR Sports Show. I am James Knowles, coming at you for the RBLR Rowdies episode, and I am here tonight not with our new usual co-host, Carlos. He is off in Ecuador, and obviously that sounds like a great place to be, but I do need to have someone here with me to talk about our beloved Tampa Bay Rowdies, and so for that, I have our producer, Eureka. Eureka, like I ask every week, I want to say, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's so good to be here. I know I'm not as cool as Carlos, but man, I was in the building for this win, and now it's 2 wins in a row and 2 statements. I guess you might want to say that, or even if you put them together, it's a pretty exciting time for the Rowdies.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only agree with you. It's been really cool to see that, obviously we started off the way that we did and things have maybe possibly quite looking like it, that we have turned a corner here. So let's get into that now. As you said, the Rowdies beat Pittsburgh Riverhounds in this possible statement win on Saturday night. It was 3-1 at the final whistle at home. And neither Carlos nor I predicted the right scoreline, but we each get a point because we predicted the correct result. So I will update that on our standings, and we will go from there. But we have no games to cover this week. The next week, we actually have 2 games coming up. It will be the last time we have that until September. I'm not entirely sure how we go a whole week without games, and then they just stick 2 in 1. But, whatever. That's not up to me, obviously. We just have to deal with it. Before we get into this episode a little more, I just want to say, please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can do so at RBLR Sports. And, of course, please like and subscribe to our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Now, let's do the quick review of this Pittsburgh game. Really quickly, in this, we will start with the 11 that were out on the field. That was C.J. Cochran, Lawrence Wyke, Jordan Scarlett, Aaron Guillen, Sebastian Dalgard, Lewis Hilton, Jan Ecker, and Jake Araman. Up top were Leo Fernandez and Jake LaCava, who were sitting a little bit behind Steven Dos Santos. And in this one, unfortunately, we saw this pattern continue. The Rowdies gave up the first goal, but we were level before halftime, so that was obviously a good way to come back. And then we scored 2 more in the second half. Lucky M. Kosana getting a very late insurance goal to make it 3-1, as I said. And this, along with Phoenix, I think that these 2 wins, as you said, this could actually mean something for the Rowdies. This could really be something that shows that we have turned a corner here.
100%. This was it started out very, very chippy, and unfortunately giving up that goal early, it didn't have the confidence that we would instill. However, we did own the possession, and we're able to make it equal, and then from that point on, it was kind of the energy had been immediately supercharged back in. We had leveled it after a good area of play where we were just firing and making chances, and then the defense eventually turned to stone against those guys and was a brick wall against Pittsburgh for the rest of the game. So just a little recap like that. It was what amazing goals too for the Rowdies.
Yeah, I loved seeing the not only the final goal from Lucky M. Kosana, which we will get to, but in particular, I love the skill from the Leo Fernandez goal. The little chip there, that was brilliant. But before we get into that, as we said, the Rowdies did give up the first goal here. So, Eureka, we got to talk about this again. It's been, I don't know how many weeks at this point in a row. Probably should have gather that information, but what do we say at this point? What did you see on the first goal when the Rowdies unfortunately did give it up again?
So it was another case of, and I know you guys had talked last week about the formation and the defense, and again the opposition, I guess, has always been like press high, get the ball, counter, because the Rowdies they're gonna own the possession, they're gonna fire shots, but they are weak on the counter, or so it seems. And it seemed like this was gonna be it again. The up until that first 10 minutes, the Rowdies had the ball. It was a little bit of back and forth feeling each other out, but for the most part, it was the Rowdies that controlled the possession and had a few shots. And then they just again, Dixon, man, between Dixon and Dequa, man, these guys were full speed ahead. They were finding areas in the defense. They were figuring out ways, and there just seemed to be a guy always cutting, always moving, getting open for Pittsburgh Riverhounds. They were able to find little areas that the back three had to kind of make a recovery and get back into position. And unfortunately, on this particular goal, they had maybe overcommitted to one side, and then as the ball gets passed back over, Dixon finds it and he fires it, and it actually gets deflected off of a Rowdies defender and into the net. But it was a little bit of really, really good speed and countering that set this goal up from the midfield, that eventually Dixon gets in the box and fires it. But it was really the press and the counter that opened this one up, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that for me, where this play started was Jan Ecker has the ball at his feet. And honestly, most of the time I feel that Jan Ecker has the ball at his feet. That's all you need to do. Like, it's not that big of a deal. He's going to beat a couple of players before he passes it off, and he's mostly successful at that. Unfortunately, this game, we see a case where he's not successful, and he gave it up. He gave it up in a bad spot, obviously, at just about the halfway line. And behind him are very few Rowdies players. Ultimately, it was actually Pittsburgh players who were sitting there waiting to receive the ball. So they're able to do a little give and go, past the one Rowdies player that is behind Jan Ecker. And then the next thing, they are in on our defenders with numbers, and Russell Cicerone can find Alex Dixon, as you said. Alex Dixon gets his shot off, and then there we go. It's what do you put it down to? It's not just a tough beginning or something like that. It's more so, in this case, it was just an individual mistake, and then bad positioning after that mistake. And I'm not sure that's actually something that happened last week too, because if we go back to that goal, the first goal from last week was when Steven Dos Santos receives the ball at his feet, and then he slips. Actually, it wasn't even necessarily a personal fault, as you would say, but he did slip, and so that's where we lost the ball. They've got numbers, they break down the wing, and then they cut it across, and that's the goal. So I don't know, it's just it's bad decision making in certain instances, and maybe that is actually what it comes down to here. Is you have to get, for the Rowdies, I suppose, you have to kind of get smacked in the face to realize where you're supposed to be in this game and make sure that you're dialed in, something that we talked about last week, being dialed in, but not, moving so quickly that you end up giving the ball away because you're trying to do too much at one time. Here, I think that maybe, I guess, it's still the case that if the Rowdies don't wake up fully as they move, into the game, then they could give up a goal, and then that's when they're like, "Oh, okay, we're playing. We got to get back. We got to get up to the right level."
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there is just a period of it seems to be the first 17 minutes of the game, I guess, where Neill's been tinkering with the formation, and we did have pretty much the same 11 that we did the week before, but just even if it's the same people, our back three is still figuring out, one, how to be a unit, but also you're figuring out how are they going to attack us. And in this particular instance, the crosses were working for Pittsburgh for those first 10, 15 minutes. And again, just speed. It felt like they were able to penetrate our shape. They were able to find a hole. They were able to make a pass or do something that would force, kind of gravity is a word I use. It pulls that gravity of the defense over to one side, and then there was just a guy kind of cherry picking on the other side, ready to receive, and it bit us with this particular play. But the good thing is that we won eventually. But in this one moment, they did seem to flip the switch or turn it on or be like, okay, now we have to be a little bit more desperate. And I don't know if I need to go into the scoreboard operating room and just make it 1-0 as they're kicking off in the beginning of the game or something. But I don't know what that is, what Neill can do to get people clicked on in the first 10 minutes. But it seems that they figure, in the past couple of games, they've figured it out. They're like the Borg. You shoot them once, and then they adapt to whatever is happening, and then now they're impenetrable from that attack, right? Uh, but it's nerve wracking, and unfortunately, it's a habit, and it's been a habit. It's something we talked about last year. Leo and you definitely. It just throughout, well, and in the playoffs it bit us, and and until it didn't bit us, and we were able to get the miracles and all these kind of amazing things. But let's not forget that a lot of that is set up by an early deficit, and it's unfortunately, I don't know how to pull yourself out of this rut in the first couple minutes, other than just get smacked in the face and then they figure it out. But Neill was quick in the postgame to say about the resilience of the team, to say that, yeah, Pittsburgh's really good, and we were able to bounce back, but again, I don't know if there's anything he can do or say. It's just they have to figure it out or get clicked in earlier.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, what the answer is there, if this is a mental thing. I haven't been in those situations, obviously, so I can't say that, there's some magic bullet for focus or anything like that. And maybe they need to use a different kind of smelling salts or something along those lines. But one thing that we do have to talk about is, obviously the defense has changed a lot here. And this is not the case from last season. Last season, we had 3 defenders for almost every single game, from game 1 to the last game of the season, all the way through the playoffs. And those were changed for very few injuries. And if not that, then it was changed because, we had to make a substitution. Somebody got a yellow card. They were possibly going to get a red, something like that. But we obviously have not had the same situation going on this year with Forrest Lasso leaving. And we've had all sorts of rotation in the back line other than Aaron Guillen, who continues to be the lone Iron Man for the Rowdies. But, Jordan Scarlett was the middle of the back 3 with Aaron Guillen and Lawrence Wyke around him. Did you think that he was possibly, let's say, the answer to that central defender role that we've been looking for?
Yeah, I think it's a 2-part thing. Putting Scarlett in the center, I think, has been good. It hasn't taken him a long time to really figure out, because we've had Antley there, and unfortunately Antley got hurt, but Antley was filling in actually pretty well as a center back in a position that he had played earlier. Scarlett as the center back, I think it might actually work out, because there's been some knocks about Scarlett on the wing, maybe a little bit of speed, or he sometimes on one-on-one situations people can get by him. But putting him in the center, I think it allows him to get a little bit of support from a defensive midfielder in certain situations. But it really, the second prong of that is Wyke is continuing to do really well, filling in what might be an unnatural position for him. So, because Guillen is just a stud, and so it was weird that they were attacking Aaron Guillen's side for the first 20-30 minutes of this game, when I would think that you would be going against Wyke, who is unfortunately has shown in the midfield that he's a very aggressive defender, and sometimes he gets called for yellows really quickly. He picked up one in this game for a separate instance, but that's more of where I would poke the hole. But to be honest with you, like, he did, as far as a defender on the wing or on the side there, I think he did great. And so when you mix in Scarlett playing really well in the center, if you don't have Castellanos and you don't have Antley, absolutely, I think he's maybe better suited in there. If you've got a guy like Wyke or someone who's a little speedier on the outside that can fight in the corner, make some crosses that go haywire just by being in people's faces and being really annoying, which I think is a good trait that Wyke possesses.
Yeah, I think that mobility is definitely a very important aspect of that role. When you are out on the wingback spot, as I suppose, well, no, that's not the wingback spot. I shouldn't say it that way. But when you are in the role that Guillen and Wyke play, it's definitely good to have the mobility. If you get beat, you're able to turn around and run back, because sometimes that's going to happen. But also, you need to be able to move yourself into positions to try and win a ball in midfield if they have sent it into somebody who's waiting in front of our back line. If you are able to get down the wing, then you kind of need to be able to do that. We saw Jordan Scarlett do that somewhat last year. We definitely saw Aaron Guillen do that last year. And this year I have seen it from, probably more Aaron Guillen, I would say. but he's the one who's obviously been playing one role most consistently out of anyone on the
Yeah.
back line. And then he did ultimately get an assist, or I believe it was an assist, but he had a great ball he had a great long ball into the box, and it turned into a huge chance there. I believe it was earlier in the game, but it was only a big chance. He was up on the left wing and he crossed it over to Leo Fernandez, and Leo Fernandez was wide open. Unfortunately, he did not put his header on the target, but it was just such a perfect opportunity, and it was created out of nothing because Aaron Guillen was barely past the halfway line. So you need to be able to do all of these different things in addition to being, a strong 1v1 defender. That's of course the most important thing when you are a defender, but I do like seeing them there. And I think that if Lawrence White can fill that role on the other side, which, as you said, he's definitely done very well, then Jordan Scarlett maybe is the odd man out in that role, so to speak. It's not that he's bad at it. It's not that, he is a player who shouldn't even be there. He obviously did super well in that role last year. But if somebody is doing better at it in the moment, you got to go with the hot hand, so to speak. And in this case, I guess it is Lawrence White's hot foot.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think if let's just say when Antley comes back, would you have Antley in the center over Scarlett? Would you keep Wyke out there, or in my opinion, I think you take Wyke out of the equation, you put Scarlett back on the wing, and you have Antley in the center. I guess seeing both for a couple games, maybe I'm leaning a little bit more towards Antley. Just because maybe I'm bit by some of the defensive lapses that Scarlett has had in his career, but also thinking of versatility, which is a huge word that Neill Collins likes to use. And so I think if you just put Antley in the center and you don't use Wyke at that point in the midfield for a reason, maybe an Armin or a Dalgard go to the bench. If you have Wyke in the midfield, then now it's like, well, where do you put Scarlett? Where do you put Antley? I think you would just put Scarlett out on the side there. What are your thoughts on that kind of thinking?
Yeah, I really personally like the way that Connor Antley has played as the central defender when he's done that this year.
Yeah.
I think that he has done a very good job, not only on the defensive side, but he is adept with the ball at his feet. And one thing that you'll see him do is if he's got some space, he will take a couple touches. He will carry it forward. And then when you do that, obviously, the opposing team generally has to send somebody to try and shut you down so that you don't have enough time and space to pick out whoever the hell you want when you've got the ball. So if you step to them, then obviously that space that the defending player just left is now open, and hopefully you can find somebody in that space. Connor Antley, like I said, has proven himself able to do that, and I really like him in that role. So I would probably... just based on what we've seen so far, obviously everything can change based on more instances and more data, but Connor Antley has shown himself to be good enough in that role for me. Now, I do also like seeing Lawrence Wyke, in the midfield next to Lewis Hilton, and then obviously that would make it so that Jordan Scarlett is the other man as the right defender, and I would probably prefer to see that in the future. I don't think that Jan Ekra is a bad player by any means. Last year we had, a hype train going for Jan Ekra in this role up top that he ended up playing. It was towards the end of the season. The front three were Sebastian Guenzati, Steven Dos Santos, and Jan Ekra. If anyone had forgot, I looking back on it now, it's easy to remember, but you do forget because soccer is kind of supposed. Well, I guess it's probably all sports, but you kind of have to have a short memory because you can't remember what you did last week and think, oh, well, whatever we did last week, that'll get us by this week. No, you got to get into it this week, and you got to be prepared for this team and this, set of conditions, all of those different kinds of things. And if something worked last year, it very well might not work this year. People adapt and they get used to what you were trying to do. So if Jan Ekra in that role that he played last year wasn't working, then, you move him back. And if he is sitting in this role in the midfield, I don't think that, he's bad at it, but I think that he is liable to go on these dribbles every so often, and not that he's bad at dribbling either, but by the nature of what it is, you're going to lose the ball a certain amount of the time. And unfortunately, in this case, it led to us giving up a goal. So maybe we look at somebody who will also go on these dribbles, but won't try to beat as many players. Honestly, I think that might be one very small difference that I'm picking up on, even as I'm saying it, actually, where Lawrence White will take a couple of steps with the ball, for sure. I have definitely seen him do that, but I think that his limit, maybe his self-imposed limit, is he will try and beat one player or two players at most. Jan Ekra, in this one instance where we gave up the goal, I think he beat two players at one time, and then there were two more players that tried to shut him down. And, at that point, you just got to get rid of it where you are. So maybe Lawrence White is the guy that I would prefer to see in midfield. And then that would, like I say, lead to Jordan Scarlett staying and Connor Antley in the center. That's very long-winded, but also we have to worry about injuries in addition to that, of course.
Well, I'll say two things. One, I want to say this has been a really good showing of how versatile and how flexible a lot of these players that Neill Collins has brought in. He's been able to use this as kind of an outlying trait that the Rowdies possess, where you can lose. You can one. There was a big hole in the center of our back three, just inexplicably at the beginning of the season, and then the guy that we thought they brought in to fill that gap just did not impress Neill Collins in preseason, and we still have not really seen him play. And then the guys that he did go out to get on loan from a MLS side, right, to bring in, that guy gets a freak injury, right, 12 minutes or whatever into playing. And then on top of that, now you've had to pull two midfielders in that role, and then one of them gets hurt. So it's just like, what more? I mean, I'm knocking on wood here in the city of lightning here that I don't get struck here. But it's like, what? Like, through all of these crazy things that we've been able to do, it's a testament that we haven't actually been hurt, I guess, too much in the standings because of this, and a lot of that is because we're able to kind of plug and play guys into alternate roles that they probably aren't the best at, but you're just good enough to, or I don't want to say it in a bad way, but you are good enough to play at this level in a position that isn't your primary position, right?
Yeah.
So the second thing I wanted to bring up is kind of, we're going to the midfield here. I wanted to flip it on its head. One of my things I wanted to point out was that the defense in the midfield has been phenomenal over the last couple games. It kind of clicked up in that Phoenix game and was just paramount in this game as a reason that we were able to not only equalize but then go ahead. And I think that if you look at the Hilton, Ekra, Dalgard, Arman midfield of this game, I think that they did a great job controlling the midfield. As much as Ekra did have that mishap, I think the guy was really good in terms of passing from the midfield. I think that he was great at defending and winning tackles at the midfield, dueling when people are trying to. And a lot of that's on the counter, a lot of that for the first few minutes. But even just as the switch flipped in Pittsburgh's momentum, where they're like, oh no, now we're down 2-1. We need to push harder. We need to go. This midfield was a big reason why they weren't able to get on the counter quickly, why they weren't able to, make great chances in order to inevitably get more goals. What have you seen? Am I wrong, first off? And if not, what have you seen in the midfield defensively in this game, or even if you want to extend it to the last game too?
No, I would say you are absolutely right about this. Frankly, I think, and I should take 1 second to say everything that I said about Jan Ekra having, this deficiency. I went on a lot, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes talking about how it was the difference between Wyke and Ekra. I want to say Jan Ekra is a top player at this level. I think that he is super good, not only in the role that we saw him last year, but he is still very good in the role that he played in this past game.
James.
Go ahead.
James, nobody is doubting that you are the leader of the Jan Ekra fan club, man. To be honest with you, like you were, I think, ahead of the curve last year, I think is if you go back in the archives and listen to James's great work, I think that, yeah, you were ahead of the curve in the Jan Ekra fan club, and yeah, no one is doubting your position there.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, reiterate that, I suppose, that everyone knows. I still think Jan Ekra is very good. And I think that everybody in the midfields had a very, very good game defensively. So, we did go up. Obviously, you said we got those goals. And then from there, we went on. We were up 2-1. We have to kind of lock this game out, so to speak. Let's not give up a goal here. And that's when the game kind of turned from the way that it went in the first half, let's say after the first 10 or so minutes. Then, in that first half, the Rowdies were mostly controlling the possession the way that we have seen them do. And, possession isn't everything, as I'm sure plenty of people will point out. But when the Rowdies hold on to possession, they kind of do so with the purpose of obviously not letting the other team get the ball to put themselves in a position to score. So in the second half, the Rowdies were perfectly happy to give the ball away, kind of let Pittsburgh have it, and then just defend and see if they could get something on the counter. And boy, did they later on in the game, something that we still need to talk a little bit more about. But yeah, the thing that we really saw, I think, towards the end of the second half, let's say they scored in the 57th to put themselves up 2-1. So maybe the last 30 or so minutes with, with breaks here and there, the Rowdies did give up possession. It was, and I'll give these stats really quickly. In the first half, it ended at halftime 57% to 43% possession in favor of the Rowdies. At the 90 minutes, it ended up being 45% to 55%, with the Rowdies having the lesser. So you have to look at it that, the Rowdies were able to give up possession, let Pittsburgh kind of have at them, but also Pittsburgh really didn't create that many chances. I didn't have everything written down from the second half, but I don't have very many large chances that Pittsburgh were able to create. There were a couple of times, especially when, they got themselves into good positions, but then the Rowdies were still able to shut things down and had several players behind the ball or behind the guy who was striking. So, everything was still covered in that sense. They did very, very well defensively, and I think that they deserve all of the plaudits for that. It was something that, not something that we don't necessarily see from the Rowdies all the time, but it's not a versatility aspect, but it means that they can play a couple of different ways. Versatility, I think, lends itself more to, players sitting in different positions as opposed to taking on different roles. But when you are taking on a different type of role in the same position, they were still able to do it. And, something that I kind of want to talk about a little bit more, and I'm going to do so today, but not specifically this moment, is just the Rowdies' ability to create a good roster with limited funds because they are in the USL Championship. I'm going to do that a little bit more later on, but it's something that is super important, and the Rowdies are able to take all of these players. And I think it's, something that, these guys have played in MLS, a lot of them, and maybe for whatever reason they didn't make the cut there. But here, yes, they are really all together a greater than sum of your parts team. And I'm sure I'm not the first one to say that. I'm sure that's been on Twitter. I'm sure that's been on other podcasts. I'm sure, everyone else has said something along those lines. But it's absolutely true. So obviously that's probably why people would be saying it.
Well, I think one thing too is a difference maker is the culture that has already been built here in Tampa Bay. There was a thing, I know Kenny Morales is working on a feature. Lewis Hilton, they had a little like trailer for it or whatever. And one of the things that Lewis Hilton, said is that he actually got a better deal from another USL team, but he turned it down to play here because of the atmosphere and the club and the everything that comes with Rowdies, being a first class team. And it isn't just us thinking, oh great, because we wear green and gold on Saturdays, but it's because the players all say it, the coaching all says it, the even the players that have gone to different places now. I mean, we have Jordan Doherty's across the pond again. You've got, even Adebayo Smith. He's been training here, but then he goes to Red Bulls. He's been really good offensively there. Well, and even players, as we've seen, that have moved on, even as when they're not Rowdies, they do well in other places. So our ability to go find these guys that are good, but also convince them to be here versus other places, I think is something that I look forward to hearing what your opinion is when you go into that a little deeper. But even if we started digging around in some other places, this might be something cool we could do on the site, or maybe even as an episode about kind of like, how the Rowdies were built, and also looking at it from a perspective of, all things being equal. I mean, they could have gone to Louisville, they could have gone to Pittsburgh, which has phenomenal coaching, right? Legendary
Absolutely.
coaching in this level. They could have gone to these other places, but they come here. Why? I think that would be cool. If we can't track down the players themselves, we can at least do a little bit of digging here, and we could do a little bit of thinking and putting on our thinking caps about how that happens. But yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it there, Pittsburgh Riverhounds obviously are led by one of the USL Championship all-time great coaches, Bob Lilly. How much do you think Neill wanted this win against him after the way the season has gone, and after, going and beating up on Phoenix in Phoenix? I think that was super important to him.
Two things that I'll point out. One, Neill did the just a legendary fist pump right in front of the mob. After the game, the celebration, he walks over to the mob. We're all, everyone's going crazy in the supporter section, and he just kind of right next to the goal, he's just like pumping his fist and, yeah, buddy, let's go, right? I've really, I only saw that in the playoffs and talking with a few of the other guys, after over a pint at Corrigan's. It seems that he doesn't do that a lot, and it hasn't. Even these people were like, we've only seen him do that a few times. So you've got that in the bank. Then in the press conference, I was able to just ask him, like, what have you learned over 4 years? And Neill. Neill said, not only was my first coaching game against them, but also like I played against Bob Lilly as a player, so I know how good of a coach he is. I know how hard it is. And you look at now, this is the fourth try. He finally has a win, 2 losses and a draw, right? So the more and more and more that he was heaping praise on Bob Lilly in that press conference, it just, in the back of my mind, I was like, yeah, he's so happy about this because he's just gushing about how good and great of a coach this is. And then as soon as he leaves, I'm sure he went into his office and was just like, I don't know, maybe he cracks open an iron brew or something, but he whatever the special thing is, like I only break this out for special occasions, whether it's a drink or cigar or a candy bar or an iron brew, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure he did it. Wherever the ritual is to celebrate a good one, he did it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been a good little period for the Rowdies. I think that this game was important for everything that you just said, and more though for the team overall. Like we're kind of starting to look up here. How much of this do you think was due to us having that break that we did? Because obviously, and this is something again that we're not treading new ground here. This is something that has been pointed out on other podcasts, on other articles, everywhere, that people have seen the schedule. They look at Rowdies in April and they're like, "What the hell is that? What happened?" And we get that break. So I think that has big implications for us.
100%. Leo Fernandez shares the same sentiment with you. In the post game, I was able to ask him, I said, what I asked Leo was, I said, some are saying that the Rowdies are back, and maybe they didn't really go anywhere, but there's a difference. There is an absolute difference to how it feels this week and last game versus all of the draws. Some of them we should have won. Some of the losses, again, games that maybe we should have won, that if we were at full strength because of injuries, if we hadn't played a game 72 hours earlier, if we didn't have to do rotation and weird little things, whatever the excuse is, they all kind of added up into not a great time. Now you've had some rest. and they didn't come out sluggish. That would have been the opposite. The opposite would have been, wow, they had all this time off, and then they came out, and for the first 10 minutes it looked like that, but they clicked it on and they got the victory in very resounding fashion. So, yeah, rest, I think, is exactly what the doctor ordered, and will continue to order because we still have a few guys out with knocks. That's why we had to have an academy guy at the end of the bench. Tate Johnson was on the bench for this game. So the more the merrier, and it's just more is more with the Rowdies. The more players we have at Neill Collins' fingertips to put in those positions, the more we can tinker our 11 to our opponent versus just literally putting the best 11 we have at the time and then figuring out where people are going to play. I mean, that's a testament that Neill's been able to do that with this roster, and we've gushed over that over the last 30 minutes. But if they have everyone at their fingertips, which it looks like they will have coming forward, it just means that more success is on the horizon. So
yeah, absolutely. And now we will do our man of the match segment, and for me,
you go first.
I'll go first here, and I'll say something that probably won't blow anybody's minds, but I guess that's really not what you're supposed to do with man of the match. Man of the match for me is someone who is again playing in a very good role for him. I like seeing him in this spot, and I like seeing what he can do with it. And he scored a lovely little chip goal. It is Leo Fernandez. I really, I thought about giving it to Lucky after the goal that he scored was so nice. But I think that obviously the amount of time that Lucky played versus Leo Fernandez, I have to give it to him.
Yeah.
So, Lucky's goal, he brought it down from a giant cross from Lawrence Wyke. And it was one touch. He actually did not bring it down properly with that one touch, but he was able to put his body in between the ball and the defender, and he was able to shield that guy away from it while he just let the ball settle itself to a good height, smacked it home. Great goal.
Beautiful.
But
so good.
But I did, like I said, I had to give it to Leo Fernandez, who has been playing in this kind of very attacking, creative role for him. He's done it now 2 weeks in a row that we've seen, and it's been very nice, and it turned into him scoring maybe not as good a goal as Lucky, but still a very talented, skillful goal where he, brought it down, and he also shielded the defender off the ball, off of the ball, with the defender on his back, and he was able to put it right up and over, maybe 6 feet high at its absolute peak, and then right back down into the goal. It was beautiful. So Leo Fernandez for me. What about you, Eureka?
My guy is Lewis Hilton. I always talk about the little things. I'm a broken record with this. So it's like, what do you want? Do you want good defense from your midfield? Well, this is a guy who wins tackles, he wins duels, he intercepts balls. If a guy gets the ball, he gets it right back from them. Like he can create. He's a pest as a defender. And then on the other side, you want to talk about an accurate passer and he's the guy who takes our corners and just sets up a phenomenal through ball for the LaCava goal. You talk about just he creates chances, he plays good defense, he does all these things. Sometimes he's the unheralded hero in that midfield, but this game he is my man of the match. Let me be his herald.
I like that.
Well, the only thing that I got to say about Mr. Hilton is in the videos that I've seen on social media, he's always wearing that nice little, it's a team zip up, it looks really good. The only thing that would look better on Mr. Hilton is a shirt from RBLR Sports. And so you listening to this here, you could be just as fashionable as my dream here of Hilton wearing one of our t-shirts. All you got to do is go to shop.rblrsports.com. If you use the promo code COYR, you are going to get 10% off your order. We have shirts there. They celebrate our Rowdies, our Lightning, who are one game away from making it one more round in the Stanley Cup Finals playoffs. We've got celebrating the Bucks, celebrating the Bandits, celebrating the Rays. You name it. we cover all of the sports here in Tampa Bay, and we have shirts for all of our fandom here in Tampa Bay as well. So again, we ask you, liking and subscribing is absolutely free, and we need every one of you to do that to support us. But if you happen to have a couple bucks on a little bonus or a little bit of spring cleaning, you sold some things, you know what you're going to do? Buy a shirt from RBLR Sports. So we got a link right in the description, James. My sales pitch is over, but they're cool shirts. I try to do a good job coming up with ideas, and they look so good on you out there. So go get them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that you have actually come up with some really, really cool designs. And I'm not just saying that as someone who, is part of
Sure,
RBLR
buddy.
Sports, but
It's because I have a mute button over here, buddy. That's it.
no, I have said I got a shirt as a birthday gift for someone else. And yeah, my dad loves it. So I am.
You got to send me a picture. You got to send me a picture of
Yes, I
Jim in
do
the
have
shirt,
to do
man.
that. You're right. We'll have to do that for one of these games for sure. But let's get into the standings update now. We'll do that really quickly, and then Eureka and I have some hot takes to get through because we do not have a preview this week, as I said. So our standings, as it is, Memphis 901 has actually moved into first place with 25 points from 11 games played. That's very interesting for us over here in the East. Following them are Louisville City and Detroit City, both on 24 points, Pittsburgh on 22 points, and then us on 19 points. Behind us are the Miami on 18 points and 18 points, and then Indy 11 are behind them. They can, however, overtake us. They have 17 points from 10 games, so they have those 2 games in hand. In the West, it goes Colorado Springs, San Antonio, San Diego, Phoenix, and El Paso. They are now into that top 5 spot, and these teams have all played a different amount of games, so there's a lot of variability. We're going to see a lot of changes in that top 5, other than possibly Colorado Springs, who seem to be killing it, when they're playing, I should say. They might be on, I guess, an extended COVID break.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so... they still maintain their top at the or their spot at the top, and I guess that speaks to just how well they were doing beforehand. But Eureka, let's get into our hot takes here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, the my hot take, my spicy hot take here. Get the milk ready for the spice here, but I think that this lineup has produced the vintage Rowdies, the play that we expect. The quote unquote the Tampa Bay Rowdies that you would think from all of our success over these past 3 seasons, really. I think that this lineup has finally produced the vintage Rowdies that we expected this season, and that we should. I think the tinkering is done. I asked Neill straight up. You've tinkered around. Do you finally have a lineup that other teams have to game plan against us more so? That, he's always quick to, he actually did, he started off by saying, kind of agreeing with what I'm saying, but then he stopped himself, literally said, let me restart, and then said, look, we always look at our opponent. We always, first and foremost, he wanted to respect the opponent. But I'm like, man, my spicy take is that, he figured it out. He tinkered around. He found a good solution, and it has worked against 2 of the top teams in this. Maybe we've downplayed it this episode. Pittsburgh Riverhounds are a tough team. They're playing good soccer, and they played well in this game. And we took them out. We defensively took them out, and they only had 1 or 2 opportunities that were really, really, really good chances. And whether it was CJ Cochran in net, or whether it was the great midfield, or whether it was Scarlett and Guillen and Wyke in the back, this was a solid defensive effort, and it created a ton of good offense. And so maybe this is where the spiciest take is, because this lineup doesn't include Sebastian Guinzotti right now. That's why it's the spicy take, because when you look at Dos Santos and LaCava, these are 2 bigger guys that they can do well in the box, and obviously Dos Santos just he's so big in that box that you can't have one defender on him. You kind of need more people, and because you've only put 1, he can basically just beat you into submission and make a great shot, and that allows Leo Fernandez to be his I don't want to say finesse as like a pejorative, but he can be creative. You use that word in the show. He can utilize his skill set in such a great way. The reason we wanted him to be a number 10 for so long is because he can create. And when you've got LaCava, who can fire it from anywhere, when you've got Duba up front that can just basically beat people up in the box, and now you get Fernandez gets to just like play around in this wonderland of opportunity. That's great. So where do we find places for Guinzotti? Where do we find places for Mkasana? And I asked Neill again about that too. I said, you have the greatest substitute tandem in the league when you can just pull Seba and Lucky off the bench, and it's ridiculous. So I don't know. Like, I don't know who I would sub out for Guinzotti. I mean, I love Sebastian Guinzotti so much. Like, if Fernandez wasn't there, say Fernandez was in the midfield and Guinzotti was here, which you might see depending on the matchup, I think Guinzotti is going to create a lot of offense from this particular lineup. So there's always a rotation. There's always an injury. There's always something. But right now, this is a great lineup. And it's a long-winded way, but there's a lot that goes into just saying that we should keep this lineup the way it is.
Well, I mean, I don't think that I don't know how people can argue when we have had these two results that we've had, but I do understand where you're coming from there. My hot take is not specifically with the lineup, but maybe the roster overall here. And what I would like to see at this point is possibly still the Rowdies go out and sign someone just to fill in when we have a lot of injuries here. Now, this is what I was referring to earlier, where I want to talk about the Rowdies roster overall and the amount of money that the team can put out. So, obviously, you look around the world of soccer, and there are teams like Chelsea. There are teams like Real Madrid. They have all the world in the money. They have enough to make God blush, but they can get whoever they want as long as that person is willing to sign for them. I guess Real Madrid fans will have to cry over Kylian Mbappe this upcoming summer, but outside of that, they can get pretty much anyone they want. They could bring in one of the best players in the world to just sit on the bench and be a depth piece. That has happened at all of the big clubs at some point. The Rowdies obviously do not have that luxury. I think that what we have seen with the Rowdies team under Neill Collins and the people who are, his bosses, like Lee Cohen and the guys who run the Rays organization itself, they have brought in a team that is incredible for what we can do. So obviously at this level, you really can't carry a gigantic roster because you don't have the money to do that. You have to pay these guys enough for hopefully, a living wage. I think with the USL Championship, with their new agreement coming up here with the Players Union, you have to pay them even more on a base level than you did previously, which is good for the players. I think that absolutely that should be the case. But this is something that, these coaches have to take into consideration when they're trying to create a team. You have so little money that you really need to spread it out very well and make sure that you get a quality team from front to back, but you have enough players on there to fill in when the inevitable injuries occur. This is sport. Unfortunately, players will be injured. If it's one game, that's still something that you have to deal with. If it's several games, if it's months at a time, then that becomes a real headache. We've looked at this recently. Connor Antley has just missed 2 games because of an injury that wasn't picked up in another game, as far as we know. He's day-to-day. I imagine, based on what Neill Collins has said, that he'll definitely be back for us next week when we have 2 games coming up. But then you look at the person that Connor Antley was replacing in the back line, Robert Castellanos. This is a guy that we brought in on loan, and he was injured, as you said earlier this episode, in the first 12 minutes of the very first game of this season. I think that he turned his ankle on turf. That's something that unfortunately happens when you're playing on turf more often, or at least as far as some studies have shown. But, he has done himself an injury that will keep him out for several months now. We don't even know at this point when he's coming back. I don't know if he's with the Rowdies organization. If I had to guess, he's probably back with his MLS team, Nashville, rehabbing and using their facilities, because it's more likely that they just have access to better facilities as a club with more money. So
Yeah.
when the Rowdies are looking at a team and they have to create this, you have to, like I said, get enough quality. And God, have they done that? They have gathered so much quality with the budget that they have, but they have also tried their best to give themselves enough depth to cover all of these injuries. And the one way that you do that, obviously, is players who are versatile. Versatile is incredibly important when you are limited in roster size. You can do like Chelsea and have literally 40 players where you're sending 10, 15 of them out on loan any given season. Or you can do like the Rowdies and you have Lewis Hilton and Leo Fernandez and CJ Cochran is here on loan and you've got Connor Antley and Sebastian Guenzotti, and some of those players sometimes start on the bench, but also they're going to go out injured. And then, like last year, one player who we saw in this role a lot was Max Lakowecki. He was brilliant and probably someone who was there on a, kind of a shoestring salary. If I had to guess, I don't know. MLS gives out their salaries. USL Championship does not. So if I had to guess, there are players like Max Lakowecki on not too much money, but he's there for the love of the game and he's there to step in. And he played an incredibly important role in several games. The Rowdies are able to do that because of smart usage of the money that is available to them, but it's still not a lot of money. So there are players that I think that we could go out and sign if we looked in, certain places, especially free agency. I think one player that I really wanted to see signed, and I didn't mention this in all of the preseason shows that we had, just because we were covering so many other things and doing all these interviews. But Luke Mulholland is a Rowdies legend based on the time that he spent with us in the early 2010s. And maybe legend's too big a term. I think that that should be a term that we can't throw around every so often. But Luke Mulholland is anyway a very good player, and it has a great legacy at this team. He was leaving Real Salt Lake in MLS because he had gotten to the point with his age that I guess he was not able to compete at the level that they wanted. Fair enough. That happens to everybody, of course. Now, what did he do? Unfortunately, he retired from the game. I was really hoping that the Rowdies would make a pitch, and I don't know if this happened or not. We might never know. I don't know even if I asked Neill Collins if he would tell us if that happened or not, but Luke Mulholland then retired from the game, and now he is scouting, I believe, still for Real Salt Lake, as opposed to playing at any level. Now, would he come out of retirement for the Rowdies? That's probably a bridge too far. I don't want to say that we should contact Luke Mulholland's agent and be like, hey, we'll give you whatever money we have left in the bank, and then hang up if he says no, whatever. But, there are players out there that I still think that we could look for. And I think that just having a little bit more depth would be great. The only other option that I see, obviously, is that we just start using these academy players who have been signed to USL contracts, Tate Johnson and Santi Castaneda. That would not be something that I'm against either. I think that if anybody is unaware, I am one of the biggest play your kids people probably on the internet. I want to see, teams use their academy kids whenever possible, but if they're not up to the level, then they're just not up to the level, and you kind of have to figure that out. So that is what I wanted to cover about the Rowdies and their roster build. They have reached such a good level because all of these players have a lot of versatility, unless they're very specialized, like a goalkeeper or like a striker like Steven Dos Santos. But I still think possibly if there's any money left in their budget, go out and try and find somebody who can do what Max Lakowecki did, who can do even what Lawrence Wyke does every game, and he can fill in 2 or 3 roles, and he can do it really well.
Yeah, they definitely are looking forward to that. And when you look at our lineup, I mean, this was the year that bigger teams were lending us their youth to build upon. Look, Jake LaCava is a poster boy for that. Exactly. And so what's the game plan for? He's doing so well that I know we have joked about like Red Bull might just they might just pull him up. He's doing so well. But and even like Castellanos and Cochran is a guy that's on loan, but for a different set of circumstances. But they've built their reputation on being such a good first-class organization that bigger teams are sending their youth. But yeah, it's also very important that we develop from within. So I agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah. So those are the options that I see, but definitely some roster expansion might be helpful in these scenarios. Anyway, that was very long-winded as well.
You're good, buddy. You're good.
So let's do our last thing here, our one more thing segment. It's actually going to be relatively long this week because we have a couple things that I wanted to cover that are outside the Rowdies realm. There's one thing I do want to cover that's within the Rowdies, and that is that Lewis Hilton was named to the USL Team of the Week last week. Congratulations to Lewis Hilton.
Sir.
Very deserved.
Congrats. Yes, sir. Yes,
as
sir.
you said earlier, he does all the small stuff, and he does it well. He does a lot of stuff that doesn't get picked up immediately on the stats boards, although lately he has been scoring and getting assists too. So he definitely deserves that. But let's move on to some of the things that have been going on in the soccer world from the European realm. In Europe, the Europa League final was this past Wednesday, and unfortunately for yours truly, Eintracht Frankfurt beat Rangers of Scotland. It was a huge loss for my dad and me. We watched it together, actually. And God, I thought that we were going to pull it out in the end. Unfortunately, everybody who watched it knows that Eintracht Frankfurt beat us on penalties. So congratulations to them. I grew up obviously in a household with a Scottish dad and all of the Rangers background that comes with that. Yeah. So it was very difficult for us. My dad had to take some time after the game to just go sit outside and process it, and I get that too. It was very difficult, but that's unfortunately how the game goes. To move on, there were a lot of leagues that played their last game this past week for the season. In the English Premier League, possibly one of the most exciting finales to a season that we saw. Liverpool and Manchester City were both up for the title, and Liverpool originally went down a goal to Wolverhampton Wanderers. Then they tied it. Then they go ahead. In the Manchester City game, they are hosting Aston Villa, and they go down 1 goal. They go down 2 goals, and then in 5 minutes, they came back and they scored 3, and they won it to win the title for the league overall. It was incredible to see. Like, it just the most dramatic finish that you could possibly imagine, other than maybe when Manchester City did it in 2012. Then at the other side of the table in the Premier League, I want to send a huge congratulations to Jesse Marsch. Jesse Marsch is a former U.S. men's national team player who has been one of the few coaches from the States to actually go and have some success in Europe. He did so with Austrian side Red Bull Salzburg. He did not do as well with RB Leipzig after moving there, and then he was signed to Leeds to try and help them, get out of promotion. They did so on the very last day when they started the day in a relegation spot, and then when Burnley lost at home to Newcastle, Leeds United were able to win away from home at Brentford with a goal from former Wake Forest player Jack Harrison in the 90th plus 4 minutes. It was, again, the most dramatic finish you'll ever see. I don't know how the EPL does this every year, but they do. And Leeds United saved themselves under Jesse Marsch. I thought that was awesome. In Italy, AC Milan won their first title in 11 years. But Eureka, I think something else happened that also might be a little exciting on the other end.
Yeah, unfortunately, Milan, they did win Serie A, but as my brethren in AS Roma Tampa Bay will be very, very, very excited for, we have a little bit of hardware we can win as well. This Wednesday, Roma faces Feyenoord in the Europa Conference League championship. Let's go, baby. I mean, this is it. Like last week, we were still in up for grabs was one of the Europa League spots in Serie A. And Roma, if they would have won, were at least guaranteed 6th. We were able to pull that out with a 3-0 win. And so now we can just rest and figure out what we're doing on Wednesday. We can throw all of the arsenal at Feyenoord. We can go for broke and know that we're in Europa League no matter what. So win or lose, it won't matter in that regard. However, we want some hardware in Mourinho's first year, and we've got players, Tammy Abraham and all these guys that we think that can bring home a trophy. Man, we haven't had a trophy in Roma for so long that we're getting that itch, man. Now it's just right at our fingertips. So I'm excited for that. But that's just a personal thing. I love it.
Yeah, it's cool to see, and I will be trying to get home to watch that game as well after this last Wednesday's disappointment. But there are some other ones to cover. In Spain, Real Madrid had already won the league. In France, PSG had already won the league. In Germany, Bayern had won the league. But there was one more final over in Germany, the DFB Pokal, which you can think of as their FA Cup, their Open Cup. That final was this past weekend. So congratulations to RB Leipzig and U.S. men's national team player Tyler Adams, who won his first trophy with that team. And pretty cool thing. They came back, I believe, from 1-0 down against Freiburg it was. I'm mixing up my German teams here. And they won that. So he got his first trophy, like I said. And in possibly one of the biggest things for American national teamers here, it was not the men's side, but it was women's players who won the UEFA Champions League. Lyon beat Barcelona in that 3-1, and Catarina Macario, an American, scored one of the goals to help them win. Lindsey Horan was also playing for them and played a very big role for PSG, or not PSG, but Lyon, to win their 8th UEFA Champions League title on the women's side. This Barcelona team, they had played 30 games in their season and won 30 games in their season.
Wow.
That was their league record.
Wow.
Like, they are an incredibly dominant side. For Lyon to have won this, I honestly, as an outside observer, not someone who follows it every single game, I thought it was a little miraculous that they were able to do so.
Wow.
But Lyon is also a very, very good team on the women's side. And so, they pulled it out in the end. They deserve that win. And so congratulations, like I said, to Catarina Macario and to Lindsey Horan, 2 U.S. women's national team players who are now also UEFA League champions or UEFA Champions League winners. And it was just such a huge weekend over in Europe for all sorts of teams in all sorts of places.
I mean, we were talking about it off air, but we were just like, unless you follow every little bit and piece, like you absolutely probably miss something. I mean, unless you just have like 6 screens on at one time and or have a rooting interest in every league, which I'm sure a lot of people do. So it's easy to miss, and what a whirlwind. But if you haven't caught up yet, you got a little bit of time because the Rowdies don't play for a while.
That's true.
So, and I can't wait till we have maybe some women to talk about in the green and gold.
That would be
possibly.
awesome.
So that would be amazing. I can't wait for that. So the future is bright. The Rowdies are awesome. They're on the winning track, man. And I want to say thank you to you listening to us right now. If you made it this far in the podcast, you are the real MVPs. For anyone who's new, though, we ask you for one thing. Go on social media. We are at RBLR Sports on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Just hit that like button. We can also, if you ever have a question for, I'm just filling in. I'm the producer. I get to listen to Carlos and James talk about the Rowdies every single week. You can ask them any questions. Either fire it right to us at RBLR Sports or use the hashtag AskRBLR. I love it. And if wherever you're listening to this right now, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify or iHeartRadio or wherever you're getting this, there's a like button, there's a subscribe button. Please hit that so that you can get our content not only for the Rowdies, but also every other of our professional Tampa Bay teams. We have a wonderful team that we've assembled here, and they do phenomenal work, and they are absolutely worth your time. So if you need to get yourself acquainted with the Rays or the Lightning or the Bucks in their off season, or even the USFL Bandits, everyone is covered here with our phenomenal team. So with that said, James, thanks for letting me fill in the chair a little bit as we wait for Carlos to stop hiking and enjoying his life in Ecuador, as I'm jealous, obviously. But he'll be back, and I want to thank you again for letting me fill some time here, man.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to come on. It's always good to have, more than one perspective, obviously, but don't sell yourself short. I'm pretty sure that your input at this point for how many Rowdies games you've watched, you have got some knowledge base that you might not even be aware of.
Dude, it has been a journey, but it's one that I took wholeheartedly, and I love it. It's so, like, it is, like, my blood has changed to green and gold, man. Like, for these past 2 years, man, as we've launched and done everything, a little bit of inside baseball here. But, you know, I'm never one to sit here and say, like, oh, I'm an expert. I am not. I'm an idiot like the rest of us. But yeah, you sit in the stands enough and you pick up a few of these things. Plus, being surrounded by so many intelligent people, whether here on RBLR Sports or just in the mob and in the crowd, and from all the brains that I've got to pick and learn things from, it's amazing. So it's been a wonderful ride, and I'm so happy that I'm able to do it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And now,
right, take us home, baby. Come
everyone listening, for a week that we don't have any games, but we did have a big win. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.